You know, we don't usually do live streams in the middle of the week. I don't usually drink on weeknights. It's a weird time we're in, though, right now, man. It's a weird time. So, we got the Voodoo Ranger, the American Haze. And I think that's just kind of the thing we need to do right now, because strange times we're living in. Strange times all around the world, not just in the world of sports. And I hate to sit here on this live stream and talk about sports, but I mean, you see the website name, right? Panther-Lair.com. It's Pitt Sports website. It's a Pitt Sports YouTube channel. It's a Pitt Sports Twitter feed. this is what I do. And so I can't help but look at things through that perspective. And look, I'm like, I'm like you, I've got a million other things running through my head these days, this week, today in particular. Wednesday night was one of the craziest nights I've seen, and then it was only followed by a day on Thursday that was even crazier. I'm trying to write the 3-2-1 column that we do on Fridays. The 3 things we know and 2 questions we have and 1 prediction, and freaking everything we know ends up being something we don't know, and the questions we have get answered and lead to new questions, and the prediction, a sneak preview of the 3-2-1 column, I was going to write a prediction that Pitt will cancel its spring game. Now, it turned out to be right, but that wasn't exactly, it's not fun. Well, I guess they haven't technically canceled their spring game yet, but you've seen the announcements by now. You've seen the news by now that the ACC has suspended all athletic activities for, indefinitely. And that includes competition, that includes practices, that includes recruiting, that includes everything. And, that probably will extend through April 11th. You would assume that that's going to go on for the next month or so. I mean, when you look at research of this pandemic, and I mean, I'm not going to even get into the science of it, because you don't come to me for science. You're not going to go to, did you see the doctors that were with the governor during his press conference today? You're not going to go to them and ask about Pitt's second-string linebackers, nor should you. And you shouldn't come to me and ask about the coronavirus. And I'm not going to try and offer an opinion on that. But it does seem pretty highly unlikely that they're going to play this spring game. So I turned out to be right. I finally got a prediction right. And it just, unfortunately, the prediction became right before I had a chance to publish the column. So that section's getting rewritten. And I was just sitting down to start writing, and I thought, you know what, let's just talk about a few of these things, Pitt related, even though, like I said, I mean, I've got a million other things on my mind. Are my kids going to have school next week? And how are we going to, deal with that? Should we go? Where should we go? What should we do? What makes the most sense? What's the safest thing to do? What's the healthy right option? So, I mean, there's a million other things to think about. But as far as Pitt sports goes, because, look, I mean, this is a part of all of our lives. It's what I do, professionally. If you're watching this live stream or you watch this video later, you follow me on Twitter, you subscribe to the website, any of those things, I mean, it matters a lot to you as well. And so from that perspective, Pitt, as you've seen, I mean, has followed the ACC all spring, all athletic related activities are canceled, and that's practice, that's competition, and that's recruiting. And the first thing that stands out to me, the first thing that probably stood out to you is, well, there goes spring practice. I already, we got the comment during the comment section, Tim Mason, darn, no real quarterback competition for two years in a row. Good one, Tim. That's you're right. I mean, nobody's going to compete with Kenny Pickett this spring, unfortunately, for those who want Kenny Pickett to be replaced. That's neither here nor there. That's the first thing that jumps out to me, though. And I think there are also impacts and effects on recruiting as well. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's a lot more than football that's being affected here. Pitt has 7 wrestlers qualify and get selected and get spots in the bracket for the 2020 NCAA Wrestling Championships. They had 3 guys who have top 10 seeds in their weight classes. This is a big deal. And that's gone. We talk about the NCAA tournament, and I know it doesn't mean as much to Pitt fans right now since Pitt's not in it. But, I mean, God, can you think about, Rutgers or one of these places that hasn't been in the tournament in a long time, and they finally were going to get their shot, and now the tournament is canceled. we don't think about that as much because Pitt basketball is not going to be in the NCAA tournament. They were never going to make it, and we know that. But you've got other Pitt sports pretty significantly affected. I mean, wrestling, that's a big deal. Real opportunity there for some of these guys, and it's gone. Swimming and diving, I was just reading this on Pitt's website, announced on Wednesday that they had 3 members of the team qualify for the NCAA championships. That's it, right? That's out. I mean, baseball and softball are in their seasons. Baseball has played 16 games. Softball has played 20 games. Neither one is doing particularly well. Softball is 8-12. Baseball is 10-6. Baseball hasn't won a conference game yet, and they've lost 5 games in a row. But they were off to a pretty hot start. And, any chance that Mike Bell had to try and bounce things the right way, you know what I mean? Try and get the thing turned around. I mean, right now they are on an indefinite 5-game losing streak because of this. And this isn't to, we're not bemoaning the ACC's decision or Pitt's decision just because, oh, darn, Pitt baseball didn't get a chance to, Pitt baseball didn't get a chance to break their 5-game losing streak, or Pitt softball didn't get a chance to, try and get a winning record. We're not crying about that. Obviously there are bigger issues here, and this is ultimately the right decision. You want to minimize crowds and kind of just put an end to these athletic events overall, and I understand it, but I guess my point is not to say, I guess my point is that we often look at things through the prism of football primarily and basketball primarily and recruiting and all those things that we do on Panther-Lair.com, but there are a lot of other sports and student athletes who are affected by this, and people who really did have something go on, something riding here, something at stake. And now, they've lost out on that opportunity. A couple of the comments, funny guys out here, but Josh Newark says, my guess is spring sports athletes will get eligibility back if the whole season is canceled. Winter sports should as well if they can't complete their respective seasons. Yeah, we'll see what the NCAA does with, You wonder if, like a school like Robert Morris, right? They won their conference tournament. They earned the automatic bid out of their league. They should have a spot in the NCAA tournament, but the tournament's not being played. So they get a spot automatically in next year's tournament. I don't know what you do there. I don't know how you resolve that. I don't know if you give some of these guys extra eligibility if they were going to graduate, but they had qualified for the wrestling championship or the swimming and diving championship. I don't know how you resolve that. And I'm not sure if the NCAA is, overly concerned with that right now. I think they've got a ton of logistics to figure out on what they're going to do now that they've canceled these events. Just like I think the ACC maybe dragged its feet a little bit in canceling the ACC tournament because they weren't sure. There are logistics to resolve in the whole situation, and the NCAA's got a lot of things to figure out. For Pitt football, though, as we bring it around to the football side of things, they practice 3 times. You get 15 practices, and they use 3 of them. And that's it. That's all they're going to use this spring. And they're not going to have a spring game, whether they've officially announced it or not. That's not going to happen. They're supposed to have pro day next week. That's not going to happen. NFL teams are already pulling their scouts off the road. Even if Pitt wanted to have a pro day, I don't think anybody would be there. So what's the point of that? So you're losing some of the key events of the spring as far as football goes, and then you're also losing this recruiting period, which is a huge recruiting period. You may or may not remember last spring, Pitt had a ton of junior recruits, underclassmen on campus for unofficial visits during the spring. A lot of guys came in during spring camp. One of our first big impressions of Chris Beatty and kind of how he really sort of, like I say, made an impression on everyone was he got a ton of young players to come up from Virginia for unofficial visits during spring camp. It was almost... we had to, me and Jim Hammett, who writes with me on Panther-Lair.com, we had to create a Google sheet to keep track of all the young guys, all the 2021 prospects from Virginia who came up to visit, because it was a long list and it was an impressive list, some really good recruits, and that's all credit to Chris Beatty. Well, that's not happening this spring. Pitt got its foot in the door with some of those younger recruits, like Rodney Hammond, who's committed. And they got their foot in the door by getting guys on campus for these unofficial visits, and that opportunity is not going to present itself now. And then you go beyond that. I think starting April 14th is the evaluation period, right? So right now they're in a quiet period in recruiting. Quiet period means the in-person contact you have can only be on campus. You can't have off-campus in-person contact. So coaches can't recruit off campus. If they want to interact with the recruit face-to-face, in person, the recruit has to come to campus. That's the quiet period. The contact period, coaches can go out and recruit off campus. That happens after the season ends, like December, January. That's the contact period. Dead period means there's no in-person contact whatsoever. Evaluation period, which is what starts April 14th. I think it's April 14th. It's like mid-April. Runs through the end of May. Evaluation period, recruits can come to campus. You can have in-person contact there, but the coaches can also go out and visit. Well, not visit. Coaches can go out to high schools and evaluate the recruits in person, watch them work out. It's particularly helpful in some of the southern states that have spring football. You can watch them do drills. Otherwise, you see them just in the weight room or maybe throwing a football around or something like that. And so that's all gone. The spring visits, kids coming to campus in March and April, it's gone indefinitely. And coaches going out on the road to evaluate recruits, you see a ton of new offers go out during that evaluation period, which is, again, the second half of March or second half of April through the month of May. You usually see a ton of new offers go out, a lot of times to juniors, sometimes to sophomores or even freshmen who look impressive. Gone. That part of the recruiting process is not happening this year. For Pitt, schools in the ACC, schools in the Big Ten, schools in the SEC. And that's just as of 8:37 on Thursday night. And I haven't checked Twitter in the last hour or so. The Pac-12 might have announced. The Big 12 might have announced. The NCAA just needs to make it a recruiting dead period, which means no in-person contact. Just make it a dead period until this whole thing is resolved. Until these conferences are willing to start having practices again and having sporting events again, just make it a recruiting dead period. Because inevitably, if you don't, there's going to be a school out there or there's going to be a conference out there that doesn't put these restrictions on itself. You'd like to think there won't be. And maybe there won't be. Maybe all 120 Division I schools or whatever it is, and all the FCS schools and all the D2, they're all just going to police themselves. But the NCAA could do everyone a favor and make it easy on everyone and just make it a dead period. No recruiting, no in-person recruiting allowed. This is what makes the most sense. Coaches won't like it because they want to get kids on campus, but why would you even want to bring a kid to campus right now? It's a ghost town. There's no students. A lot of your players probably aren't even around because they don't have to come back for practice. And I wouldn't be surprised if by next week, right now Pitt is I think the students don't have to come back from spring break until March 23rd or something like that. Is that the right date? It's March 23rd, March 30th, something like that. Vanderbilt, and I'm sure they're not the only one, but Vanderbilt's the one that I just heard about earlier today on Thursday, canceled the spring semester altogether. Just get out. And the kids have to be out. The students have to be out of the dorms by the end of the weekend. More schools are going to be doing that. More colleges are going to be doing that. Pitt very well may be doing that. You wouldn't even want to bring a recruit to campus, although with nobody around, no students, no faculty, no one in Oakland, just Oakland being a ghost town, it might be kind of safe. You're not going to interact with many people. That's social distancing if you go to a ghost town. But, it wouldn't even be a good recruiting environment. And I don't see, I don't know where the end point of this is. But as we talk about athletics and we talk about football and we talk about recruiting, you're really changing the recruiting cycle. And you're changing it for basketball too, because we're coming up on a pretty crucial time of year. Once you get out of the NCAA tournament, you start having a lot of these events for coaches to go to, AAU events and things like that, and you're going to start interfering with that schedule. You're going to start interfering with those events and those evaluations, which are an important part of the recruiting process. Not to mention you're coming up on the spring signing period for basketball, and kids aren't going to be able to take official visits. The Pitt's after two guys right now that they want to try and get in this 2020 class. Jeff Capel wants to sign, and fortunately for Pitt and fortunately for Capel, both of them have already been on campus for official visits. Because if they hadn't, they're not going to get on campus. They're not going to get on campus for an official visit before they sign in April, whenever the spring signing period is. And that's I mean, it's to the benefit of Pitt that they visited Pitt, and it's to the benefit of Pitt that they're not going to be able to visit any other schools going forward between now and signing day. It's. I was about to say like something like it's turning things upside down, but let's be honest, this world's upside down right now. Had a couple comments come in. Roman says, no more spring practice favorites. No more spring practices. Favorites a team returning so many starters and their quarterback like Pitt. This is a good point. You know, maybe they, not that they don't need spring practice, but maybe it's, actually, I don't know. I mean, I think it's better to have practices. It's better to have 15 practices if you can have them. 404 Strang says students aren't coming back to campus. Got to move out, and it's all online starting the 23rd. Oh, really? I didn't know if it was closed for the entirety of the semester. I thought the last thing I'd seen from Pitt is that they weren't allowed to come back till the 23rd. But, either way, I mean, this is where it's all going. It's over. I'm not going to say it's overreaction because I don't think it is. You got to do what you think is the best thing to try and avoid things getting worse. And it is going to get worse before it gets better. And you'll see, we might be doing a lot of these live streams because I might not be allowed to leave the house. We might all be quarantined. But I figure we should talk about it a little bit. I mean, it's big news. I mean, it's a significant change to the college athletics calendar at a time where there's a lot going on. I mean, obviously with March Madness, spring football. I mean, those are your two major sports involved at the same time in fairly significant events. Fairly significant parts of their calendar. It's the lone football you get between bowl games and the start of the season. And then obviously it's the championship tournament. So it's a pretty big deal there. And then, wrestling championships, swimming and diving championships, baseball and softball seasons in full swing. It's a big deal. And, strange times we're living in. So I thought we'd sit down and chat about it for a few minutes. I appreciate you tuning in and checking this out and hanging out on the live stream. As always, it was kind of an impromptu one, kind of out of nowhere, but I appreciate anybody who stopped by to check it out. Check out the website. We'll have plenty of coverage there. That's another thing I wanted to say. Panther-Lair.com. There's no more spring football, and obviously basketball's been had over. We've still got plenty to write about because recruiting is still going to be going on. They can't have in-person recruiting, but the coaches can get on the phone. The coaches can send direct messages. The coaches can be in contact with the recruits. Recruiting is still going to be happening. It's just not going to be in person. It's not going to have visits. So that's a significant little difference there, but there's still going to be plenty of recruiting coverage to bring out for you. So make sure you check out Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. on 93.7 The Fan, the Panthers Insider Show. I want you to check that out. We'll be talking about all these things. We'll also be recapping the basketball season and talking about some spring football things that have happened just because, spring football did happen. It's not it's not over. It's over. But there were still 3 practices, so we'll talk about that and some topics there as well. So thanks again. I appreciate it. Every now and then we'll pop up these little reaction live streams just to get some thoughts out there. And like I say, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you on the website, Panther-Lair.com. Oh, and subscribe on YouTube. Do me a favor. Do me a solid here. All right, we're all trying to get through this. Do me a solid. Subscribe. The button's got to be like right below this screen, right? Subscribe on YouTube. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll talk to you later.